What's up? It's Mike Mal, and you are listening to the Athletor Podcast, where we dive into the processes, mindsets, strategies of some of the most successful athletes and coaches from all walks of life. Yo, what's up? It's Mike. Athletor Podcast is coming at you very soon. This week's guest is Brent Metcalf, and we go through some incredible tactical things that David Carr did to win his national championship this past year over Keegan O'Toole. And we also talk about who is going to be the new face of the Iowa State Cyclone kind of brand of wrestling. We get into some really cool stuff about recruiting and how it's changed since he's been at Iowa State. And you are never going to believe what he says he would do with a magic wand for the sport of wrestling. Athletor Podcast coming up next. Metcalf, how are you, sir? Thank you very much for joining us.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here, man. I'm doing really well, really well.
Good. Man, I've been wanting to have this conversation for a while. How the heck did you prepare David Carr for the roller coaster season that was 2023, 2024? Yeah.
Well, I mean, in all honesty, when you get a kid that's at that level, you got to give credit to him. Give credit to him and kind of what he's done, what he's overcame, and then just kind of keeping the faith. And that's by that I mean like keeping belief in himself, right? So a lot of the credit, all the credit goes to him. He's the guy that went out there and did that. I think what's really great about him is his ability to continue to try to learn and continue to try to get better. Even after you see him every year, he won the Nationals and then didn't win the Nationals, and there's no difference, right? It's the same hungry guy that you're getting every summer. So a lot of kudos to him there. And then, you're specifically talking about the it would be the semifinal match, right? It had all the hype around it. And I'd like to say that we had an awesome game plan going in. Losing to the Big 12s was probably a blessing to an extent because one, it kind of revamped him. And then it also, I think from tactically, I remember our conversation was like, hey man, like your pace was great, but like you don't need to put your head outside on that shot over and over and over. Like we don't need to play in that area, So our
the kid's good there. He's good there.
He's good. And why there's no reason to say, hey, I'm going to try to beat you at your best position, beat him where you're best. Right. So tactically, I think it was more like, hey, let's go out and hand fight and make him work. And if you can get your head inside, good. But David Carr, you're an animal. You train harder than anyone in the world. Let's make it get the last takedown to win. Like that's the match that I want for you. Right now. That's kind of how the match played out, but it did not play out in any way. Obviously he gave up the takedown with 17 seconds to go, like it was going the wrong direction. But that was our general idea, was like, hey, we didn't need to replicate what we did last time, which was go out and hit it, put yourself in that head outside position, spent some time working on it. And then at some point it was just like, screw it. We don't have to be here. Right. Like just
what are we doing in
position where we're good at. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but here's the thing though. And like, if we can get into the X's and O's of this stuff, it's really interesting to me because Keegan has an incredible ability of forcing the head to the outside.
Yeah.
He makes you feel like you're in more danger if you keep your head on the inside. Yeah. And then you pop your head out and you're like, oh crap, what did I just do? Was that a conversation that happened in the room?
For sure. Yeah, because here's another great thing about David Carr is it's dialogue back and forth. And I've described this on interviews before, where it's awesome, where maybe I bring an idea that's like, hey, let's work on this. And then he'll kind of mold it and change it. Does that make sense? Because, I see it one way, and then he'll add and we'll kind of create something new out of it. Does that make sense? So that's certainly how that was. If I remember correctly, I think a lot of the working through that we were doing was like, hey, but when I get stuck here, obviously I'm like, hey, hide your ankles so he can't, stick you in a position where you want to pop your head out. But I think we had kind of landed on like, hey, when you hit, there's a point where you got the corner or you don't. And if you don't, you can clear out, you can release, you don't have to stay in there. So there's, you know what I'm saying? Like, I think, and he gets
I
away
call
with
it
it. Every
falling
guy's
in love
different.
with the leg. Oh yeah. No,
Yeah.
I
Some
call it
guys get away
falling.
with
They
it as
fall in love
well.
with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But he's an example of a guy that can do it. There's certainly some guys in our team where I'm right away saying, dude, when you're getting long, release and come out.
Bail.
David does it.
Bail.
He can flip his shoulders backwards and he'll find a way. So there's definitely some discussion there where it was like, hey, if you're telling me that, like you just said, that like, hey, I can't finish, I'm in a bad position, I have to pop my head outside. Well, let's work it. Right. So we got a game plan if we happen to get there. And at least I know where we want to be, or where you want to be. And then besides that, like if you're not on the corner, clear and get out. Like release, dude, you can hit 10 more shots. Like you can get the guy's legs,
Live to fight another day in there for sure.
Pretty much, yeah. Which is it's funny for me as a coach too, where I'm not an ego guy, but a lot of my mentality is like, hey, like I'm gonna wrestle how I wrestle. And
that was actually getting to my next point though,
me.
Coach.
Yeah.
See, that was getting to my next point. You were a stubborn son of a gun. You were a stubborn son of a gun. Yeah. It was lefty high crotch or be damned, right? Have you backed away from that as a coach?
No, I mean, to your point, for sure. Where I was going was that I'm certainly stubborn. You wrestle, focus on what you're good at, and know what the other guys do, but only focus on you. I think that especially this is a very unique example. We have two such high level guys that it's like chess match.
Sure.
To change who we are, but let's just strategically, just like I started off with, put ourselves in positions where we're good. And
so you left off with saying you're not going to change the person that they are, but we have to be intelligent as well, right? I mean, so if you can kind of just finish that thought, that'd be great, man.
Yeah. I think that the biggest thing, and kind of what I was saying, was that there's two such high level guys that at the end of the day, I think it was like, all right, well, let's just recognize where they're really good, and there's just no reason to go in there and wrestle where they're good at, especially when Dave's got so many tools.
Sure.
So yeah, it was a unique thing as a coach, because I don't typically, it's not really my philosophy personally, change a little bit from a coach point of view, but to kind of like strategize it. Like I don't really get big into the whole like, hey, this guy is left-handed, he does this, he does that, so you need to block here and do this, because to me, I believe you're spending way too much time thinking about what that guy's doing, and you're not worried about what you're doing, right? So I'm just not huge into the like every guy we have a game plan that's tailored to that guy, because you're just, I don't know, in my head at least, I want you focused on your offense, on where you're good, and let's pick one or two areas like, hey, be aware that this guy's good here and here, and just know that, right, and adjust, and maybe we make them feel it or something. So yeah, I would say it was about that with this, but it was kind of specifically once we got worked through it, I was like, dude, don't get head outside. Just don't put your head outside.
That's it. Yeah. and you know what's funny? I've been fortunate enough to have conversations with a lot of high level coaches, and one of the things that kind of keeps on coming up, you're right. You cannot spend a tremendous amount of time worrying about what this guy is going to do and how he's going to do it. But the best way it was described to me, and this is what I try to tell a lot of the high school and club coaches around here, know where he's the most dangerous, know where he can put the most amount of points on the board, and know what he's going to do with 30 seconds left down by one. If you can kind of just take those two things, identify them, and then work backwards from there, that seems simple enough for even the middle of the road coach to strategize for, but B,
Mhm.
look, an athlete has to be able to wrap their head around it. No.
Yeah. No, I think that makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense. And that's probably something I find myself picking up mid-match a little bit, especially the NCAA tournament isn't a very good example because you have lots of time to prepare. But let's just use any sort of regular tournament. And I'm thinking lower level where you may not have time to watch a bunch of video on a guy, right? But as a coach, especially sitting in that chair, you could certainly pick up like, okay, I could see this guy's right leg, left leg lead, and this is his go-to shot. So to go for your example, my job as a coach then would be when there's 30 seconds to go to have an understanding of watching the match. Like, this is what this guy's going to do. So, no, I like that. That makes sense, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, I hope so, because I've been telling a lot of people that.
No, I think that's good. But I've heard, so many things like he ties here, you tie here, and like your counter strategy against.
It's too much.
To me, honestly, if I was going to do that, it's like I've got a guy that's a JV guy and he's trying to wrestle Jordan Burroughs.
Right.
And it's like,
right.
I'm basically telling him, you don't have a chance. Here's how you're going to stop Jordan and like let it get all the way to the third period. And then maybe we get lucky. Like, that's how I feel like I'm speaking to them. If I was just like, everything you stop him, at some point you gotta, you gotta find your offense too. And so.
Yeah. All right. So let's kind of shift gears here. Having been on staff in Iowa City and now in Ames, it looks like, from my perspective, that the recruiting philosophy is slightly different in Ames than it was in Iowa City. It looks like you guys have a far more diverse cast of characters, both technically and geographically, right? Like, you guys kind of recruit everywhere. Is that something that's talked about, or is that just something that happened naturally?
Well, I can't really speak for the University of Iowa because I was just a club guy at the time. So I'm just kind of outside looking in. I wasn't necessarily in on recruiting meetings to know exactly what their philosophy was. My best guess would be there's a big alumni presence. Obviously, a lot of the guys that went to University of Iowa have connections there somehow. It seems like there's a lot of guys, their athletes end up coming there. I would just say from an Iowa State point of view, then it's getting better, but let's just start when we first showed up and we were last in the country. It was kind of clear that it was like, all right, like we're probably not going to win the state right now, like the state of Iowa, right? So the very best kids, they're born and raised Hawkeyes. I joke to people, I go into houses and I see pictures of myself on the wall and I'm like, wow, like we're going to get this guy. But you forget
Or
it's a
not.
Hawkeye on this.
He's wearing
Hawkeye
black, that guy.
man. Yeah, the singlet I was wearing, right?
Dang it.
So we've gotten a couple guys, but I think early on, especially, and like I said, I think that's starting to sway because we're having success now, right? But not that we bailed on the in-state guys, but I think it was like, hey, how are we going to really jump levels? It's probably not by hanging our hat on winning the state, right? So what can we do next? Kevin Dresser had a ton of experience out east, right? He was a high school coach there for years and years and years. Obviously, the Virginia Tech had a lot of connections there. That was okay. We've grabbed a couple out east guys, but what we've also come to realize is like bringing those East Coast kids, which they like to stay there for whatever reason, right? That is part of their culture. It's a long ways, and there's like a ton of really great options between the East Coast and where we are, right? And I try to describe to people, I'm like, dude, they go 5 hours, 6 hours, 10 hours. We're probably like 17, 20 hours, right? Like, so there's so many really great options. It's not like there's a bunch of crappy schools, right?
Right.
So we kind of dabbled, but didn't have a lot of luck with maybe his bread and butter. And that's where what I would say is we turned our direction the other way. We're like, all right, go west, right? Go west. You don't have that barrier. You've got kids that are hungry to be a part of a a storied program, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's not always the case, but I think that there's been a little bit of a shift where it's like, and what's funny is can't remember who told me, but one of our alumni was talking about Bobby Douglas back in the day, and that was kind of how he made his living, was out west.
Mm-hmm.
And ironically, we had started to have success out west, and I think that I had heard that, and I was like, oh, well, maybe we're onto the right recipe then, you know.
Yeah,
And we keep recruiting
it's
all
tricky.
over, but right.
But it's tricky, right? Because a lot of the Utah, California type kids, they want to stay they want to stay close to the West, but they don't have very many options, right? I mean, in the state of California, it's Stanford, it's Cal Poly, and now to a lesser degree Cal Baptist. You got Arizona State out there. UVU's seems like they're going in the right direction, but that's really it. You talk about out east, right?
Yeah.
There's 100 schools. I mean, I'm exaggerating, but there's literally, tens of schools that you could kind of choose from. But here's the trick to me: getting a kid from my area, Southern California, to go to a very small town that is Ames, Iowa. How does that kind of present itself? Now, look, they're all going to yes you to death during the recruiting process. But what are the kind of red flags that you see going, man, I don't know if this kid, I think the kid's biggest hurdle is going to be dealing, like, how did you get MJ Gaitan, who lived in Temecula? Like, that's a gorgeous area of the country, to move to small town Ames. Like, how do you do that with like kind of addressing the elephant in the room that is like, hey, this is a very small town?
Yeah. I'd like to pretend that we got magic tricks and we can pull one over on guys, but we don't. You bring them in and you say, hey, here's our town, here's our culture, this is what we're about. The one thing that Temecula does not have is, people that are crazy about the sport of wrestling, and crazy, right? Like, that is what is unique about the state of Iowa, is that these people are passionate. And these guys see it every time they're out to eat for breakfast, and you've got fans talking about the weekend, like, it's just a part of our culture, it's a part of our community. Right. So that's what that's what we tell them, and that's what they see, and that's what they experience while they're here. I think I've joked with MJ a couple times about it. Is he miserable? No, I think he likes it. It's just different, right? It's just different. It's not the same life, but it's a different life, and it's a darn good one too, Sure. And you know what? Every kid's got different personalities as well. I certainly remember my recruiting process, and, just me alone, I just, for some reason, wanted to leave. No good reason. I should have went to University of Michigan. I loved the staff. I had really great friends there. Josh Trell and I, we were like damn near best buddies. Had every reason in the world to go, but I was just like, I kind of want to try something different. So that happens too. It's not that, again, you don't necessarily have to sell them or fool them into believing that it's something that's not. It's different. And if you love the sport of wrestling, it's a really great place.
It is a great place. There's no question. And part of that great place, most of that great place to me, is wrestling is important. It's very, very important. And it seems like Coach Drescher has put an emphasis on selling out Hilton Coliseum.
Yeah.
Where does that fall? Where does that fall on the priority list of the Cyclones right now? Like, obviously, like, look, you got to, it might not be line item number one, but it's got to be up there, right? Because you guys are putting butts in the seats, and it's kind of cool to watch.
Yeah, well, winning helps a lot of that. But I do know, when I first came in, I had never had really any college coaching experience, right? I do remember being kind of surprised, but again, I'm kind of got my eyes open, just kind of learning that seemed to be, at least day one, was one of the top priorities. Obviously, we've got to, turn the culture around and recruit, but there was a huge emphasis in something that maybe surprised me as a young coach, where it's like, wow, we're doing a lot of things, whether it's socials, whether it's just outreach to fans, whether it's social media stuff, to to get fans in the seat, And I remember just as a young coach being like, wow, we're putting a lot of energy into this. So you are correct. It's a big piece of it. I would say probably every time we speak to a group, it is mentioned that we want you there. We want you to get season tickets. Because at the end of the day, and especially with the new world that we're about to go into, which none of us really even know what that's going to look like exactly. But I do know that the more fans and tickets you're selling, the safer position you're probably going to be in as far as a program. So
Sure, that makes sense. What does that look like when the rubber hits the road? What does it look like when you go and do? I know I'm just going to give an example. Rob Cole told us that now what they're doing to put butts in the seats is they're doing like clinics for kids, but instead of doing free clinics, they're making them pay X amount of dollars, but with that admission to the clinic, you get a season ticket as well. So like, what is that like? What are some of that's a pretty solid, it's a great idea, right?
Because the question is, do they come? They got to come.
Well, that's the whole thing, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And I think the whole point that he was trying to make was that if you do it for free and then give them the season ticket, they probably won't come because they're not financially invested. But because they're paying money for whatever. But I guess the point is, I want to give a blueprint to even young coaches out there that might not be at a Division I level to go, hey, here are some of the things that Rob Cole did at UNC. Here are some of the things that Brent Metcalf and Kevin Dresser do at Iowa State that maybe you can do for your smaller program, right?
A couple of things that I think have been very impactful. One, obviously, your social media and creating hype around it there, but that's pretty easy for anyone to do, plug and play. Honestly, I'm going to be 100% honest with you. What is your product? Right? Like, what is your product? And that's the biggest thing that has helped us is it has taken years, right? But I can tell you one thing, when you come to an Iowa State wrestling match, our guys may not win every match, but they're going to wrestle their butt off and they're going to put a lot of points up and it's going to be exciting. And that's what I hear from fans. And that's what our feedback, obviously that's what we preach, but our feedback to our guys has always been like, hey, like go out and compete your butt off, put on a show. And Dresser describes it great. He's like, these people pay whatever it is a ticket, $15, $20 a ticket. Like they want a show, go put on a show, go entertain them. Right. So that's a huge piece of it because you can there's a lot of great ways you could promote people or do promotions to get people to just come in. But do you stick them? Do you get them to come back? So that's a big piece of it is what does your product look like? And then get your team in front of the community. Right. So the clinics is a good idea. That's a really great idea. One thing that Dresser did a lot, and we've tried to, I think we're going to revamp it again this year, is during our football, like the tailgate before football games, have mats out there and have wrestlers doing a little workout on the mat, have them visible, have the people see them. Because especially in our unique situation, it sure seemed like the fans were there, right, because of the history. But it's like you just needed to remind them, like, hey, by the way, we remember the wrestling season tickets you used to have? Well, we're great. We're back again. Like, get back on the bandwagon, right? Because you jumped off for so long. That makes sense.
Sure.
So yeah, get your athletes in front of people. We actually had a really great promotional guy. He actually just left the University of Michigan, but he did a lot of great stuff. He was very creative with like the sororities and the frats, getting your students engaged, right? So I'm talking college level now. Find a way to get your students engaged. He did a lot of really cool things where he was like giving away a flat screen TV, like they would earn credits for every match they showed up to. And then whatever sorority or frat had the most got a new 70-inch TV. That was his idea. But I'm saying that, getting creative ways, he did a lot of the free food, right? Well, those college kids, they'll come out for free food. That's a big piece too, is engaging
that makes sense.
Community. Yep.
Yeah, that makes sense. Like that. Okay. Pizza night. Like, dude, if you like, look, when Poway wrestles Buchanan, it is not hard to fill the gym. Okay. It's not hard.
Well, when we wrestle Rancho Bernardo and we put our third string in and we blank them anyway, it's hard to get people to get excited for that type of a duel. So guess what? With the ticket goes a long freaking way. And I know that sounds stupid, but it does. Like it puts butts in the seat. So the kids are every student gets a slice of pizza when they walk in. I mean, it makes sense. You mentioned what is your product? What I think of it in terms of brand. What does the Iowa State brand look like? So now that David is kind of moving past collegiate wrestling, who best exemplifies the Iowa State brand? Who's the new Cyclone poster boy going to be?
That's for them to decide, man. That's the unique thing about being a coach and being a part of a program like this is I think in a perfect world, you could say like, hey, this guy's a great leader. He's going to be our national champ. You're like, this guy's going to move us forward. At the end of the day, they decide that. They decide which guy wants to be the next face of the program, right? We've got a lot of guys, especially young guys, a lot of really young guys in this. I'm talking, they still got 3-4 years eligibility left. That can be that guy. But there's nothing that I can do as a coach to get themselves there. At the end of the day, you have to do it, right? And you do it by entertaining wrestling. So wrestling your butt off and winning. And you don't have to win every time. You don't have to win every national title going undefeated. But you're darn near, you need to. You need to elevate yourself when it helps. And be an entertaining style, right? Score a lot of points, get pins. A lot of people love MJ, right? MJ was around to 12 this year, but people love him to death. Why? Because he freaking pins people. He's exciting,
He's got some tricks too, right? Like he's got some fun. It's fun to watch. It's fun to watch. Chittum as well. I think he wrestles a brand of wrestling that's fun to watch. I mean, he's got a motor on him and he hand fights hard. I mean, but that to me is the coolest part about what you guys are doing in Ames. You look at Chittum, you look at Gaetan, those are completely different wrestlers. And yet they're both completely different, right? So what is that like as a coach? Like this, like you said, this is your first time in a college room as an NCAA coach. How do you coach that? Because you had a pretty straightforward bread and butter type of style. How do you wrestle with Gaetan who wants to chin whip people and all kinds of funky stuff?
I think you give them space to continue to do what they do best, or they think they do best. But as MJ's learning, and he's come a long way, and so much credit to him and the work he's put in, like you still got to have offense. Like the way that I describe it is like you still got to have, with 30 seconds to go, you got to have go-to takedown, just like you said, right? And if you don't, if you're a counter guy and you're losing with 30 seconds to go, you're kind of SOL. Right. So we got to have something, right? I love that you can wrestle in a million positions. I love Chittum, right? Like I love your motor, your craziness, but like, what is your shot? And like, what's the shot with 30 seconds to go? You're getting the leg. And again, let's use David Carr, right? We all knew what was coming. Right. With 15 to go, the whole world, Keegan knew, everyone knew what was coming. Like, what's your shot? What's your go-to? Right. So that's the thing that we hardline maybe with them is like, we got to have something. Okay. Now, once you've got that thing, we could develop and work on all sorts of, you know what I mean? Like everyone's got different tools, right? But we have to make sure we've got that go-to, because if we don't, we're not really helping you much, right? Like we got to give you something to go score with, right? And it doesn't have to be the last 30 seconds. I don't want any of our guys wrestling that way, because the reality is I want you scoring in the first probably minute and a half, and then maybe scoring again in the next minute, and scoring that way. But as that wrestling action gets going, you picked a guy like MJ. Guess what? You get up by 5 points, that's going to turn into a tech fall or pin really quick, because now that guy has to wrestle you, right? Now he has to have he's got to come to you, right? Well, now we're playing. Now we're playing where you want to be, right? So yeah. I mean, I don't know if I answered your question necessarily, other than we definitely hardline a go-to offense, and I don't care what it is. In our room, we say you got to have a go-to right and a go-to left, right? You got to have two, right? And then we go to your basic defense, and then getting off the bottom, and then on top of then from there, we say let's take your tools and let's mold them, right? Let's take your tools and let's mold them. So that's how you work with them differently, but they gotta have a go-to,
Is there one person in the room that changed the way that they wrestle even a little bit because of 3-point takedowns this past year?
No, I don't think there is, and it worked really well for us. Like I said, what our guys have bought into is scoring points, right? I would hope that you would never, in the last year and a half or two, go to an Iowa State duel and be like, oh, these guys are definitely trying to hold on with their one takedown and get a win. Like that's what they're being coached to do. I would hope that we never see that, because if that happens, and it did in the past, they're hearing it from us in the back. Like that isn't okay. Like continue to build your lead. There's a time and a place for that with 15 to go. When there's 3 minutes to go or 2 minutes to go, we keep building your lead,
Yeah.
So no, that was what we preach, and it just helped us more because we score points.
Yeah.
So you're gonna give us more points now for our scoring.
I like that. Right. More points equals more gooder. Yes, I agree. But there is that point where you do have to brick it up, right? Like I think that any kid that I coached at a high level, the one thing that they struggled with, and I think I brought it up on this podcast before, but the kid Knox, right? He was one of mine when he was growing up, and I still have a lot of conversations with him. He went to the World Team Trial Finals last year in Vegas, and in the first match against Blaze, he was down by 1 and didn't start his sprint until, let's say, 30 seconds left. And against a kid like Blaze, that's just not enough time. Period. The end. Yeah. It's like you got to put a full minute of firing off offense to kind of make up that ground. And then in the second match, he was up by 1 and he started playing defense about a minute minute left in the match, and that's far too long. So is that a common thing that you see from your athletes, that they're really unsure of when to start their sprint or when to be strategic about their offense?
Honestly, we don't use those words. We don't use your sprint. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, because to me, that means, what were you doing before your sprint? Were you not trying to score? So, and I'm not hating on that necessarily. And I don't know if it's even intentional, but as you're saying it out loud, it's definitely not part of our vocabulary. The whole like, hey, 30-second sprint, because it's like, dude, if you've been losing for the last 3 minutes, you should have been doing a 3-minute sprint, right? Like you should have been doing a 2-minute sprint. I understand if you know what I mean? Like there's ebbs and flows of the match. You're not going to sprint for 3 minutes. Sure. But I shouldn't have to remind you that you're losing with 3 minutes to go, right? We're not going to wait for 30 seconds, because that's exactly how you're going to lose, right? And on the flip side, I don't think it would come out of our mouths to say 30 seconds defense, right? Yeah. Because you should have been 3 minutes ago continuing to build your lead. When there's 30 seconds left, if you happen to be only up by 1, you know what I mean? If the circumstances fall that we need to do defense, then we got to do defense. But I want our mindset thinking that we're building. We build when he shoots. We build when we find our offense, both ways, right? And hopefully we don't have to say 30-second sprint or 30-second defense. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. No, that makes all the sense in the world. Yeah, for sure.
Now, all right, I want to shift back. You're going to get there. It's going to happen. I get it. I know it. I'm not blind to the understanding of when you match up 2 really elite guys. But I would say that, for your guy in particular, like he didn't start his sprint until 30 seconds. Well, how long were you losing? Like, because if the guy scored on you the minute to go, you should have been busting your ass to get it going. If you scored on you and that was 30 to go, well, then you need a 30-second sprint, right? Like, there should have been it was wasting time for. Yeah, what are we wasting time for?
Yeah, no.
You know, you think you're going to get to that guy in 30 seconds? He's elite.
That kid's good.
We need a whole
that
period.
kid's really good.
Yeah, we need a whole period to do it. Give yourself a shot. So,
Yeah.
I'm curious. I think that interactor, that way that you've explained your mindset there is like you can see the culture that you're trying to build there at Iowa State. I'm curious kind of your approach, when you're in a tight match like that. Obviously the hope is to score, but how does your kind of strategy change there when you're wrestling a match that, isn't something where you're going to, score 27 points in that match?
Yeah. What I would say, and the best way that I could describe it, is you need to put yourself in position to score. And here's what I mean. As a coach, you can watch your athlete and you could tell if he's on his heels and he's backing up, or if he's on his toes and he's going forward. And I don't mean forward like running forward like an idiot, but I just mean if he's working to improve his ties. Okay. So how I would describe it, and Panero's a really great example. He did an awesome job at the U23s, and he's a guy who's always been gas pedal on or brakes way off, right? And finding that balance for him where it's like, dude, if you're not trying to score, like if you're winning and you're maybe, you're chilling, you know what I mean? Like you're recovering or you're in that lull, okay? You need to still have a control tie, right? Like it's a 2-on-1, underhook, a collar tie, head position. Like you still need to be improving there because we can't just be block ass out. One, we look horrible, right? People don't want to watch that. But also that's when you're gonna get, right? That's when they're gonna fake and they're gonna get you stuck. So what you're saying, and I get it, is like, hey, I appreciate the mentality, but let's just be honest. On that level guy, we're not scoring 5 takedowns, right? But if we get one, we can't just shut it down, right? And then I would say the opposite side is you got to understand that, like, at that elite level, if you get taken down, he's probably has shut down. He's not going to make a mistake. Yeah. So it goes true that your 30-second sprint ain't going to be enough. You need a minute and a half sprint. Not sprint, but you get what I'm saying. Like, dude, I'm going to need to touch his leg 4 times to finish one. Now, I'm not going to get a 1-for-1 on this guy. Does that make sense?
Yeah. There, the words we use are urgency, right? Like, I don't want a level of panic involved, but I do want a sense of urgency involved. That's a great way to put it, Coach. All right. We're starting to run out of time here. I do want to talk a little bit about recruiting one more time. We had one coach on, and he put his finger on such a distinct and finite red flag that he has. And I'm just giving you an example, but I would love to know if you have any red flags in recruiting as well. He said when the parents ask when the parents speak for the kid more than the kid speaks for himself, he said that's a huge red flag. Is there something in your mind that's like a monster red flag? Like if you see this in a kid, it doesn't matter how talented he is, how many state titles he's won as an athlete, you're just like, man, that's a big old turnoff.
I would say, and I say this to a lot of guys, to me, there's a lot of in-match and post-match behavior that I kind of watch, if that makes sense.
Sure.
Whether you won or lost, like it's important to me to see how you react maybe around your teammates. Like those are really telling times of the type of people or type of person that you are. So I don't know if I could put my finger exactly on like this particular behavior, but if certainly you see a guy run off a mat, throw a big fit, and then he goes out the next match and doesn't wrestle for crap, like that's a red flag, right? Like it could be a lot of different things, right? It could be I was supposed to win. You know what? I understand it. I get it. But like at this level, this high level, you got to be gritty, man, and you're probably gonna lose. And you're gonna need to come on the backside, So I don't know. I think a lot of stuff there, like in-match behavior, like how do you carry yourself? And you could be a tough guy. You can have does that make sense? But you could tell when a guy's pouty. You could tell when things get tough and he doesn't like it, So that's maybe something that I just try to cue on is just, I want to find those tough moments when you're recruiting a guy, and sometimes some of these elite kids, it's hard because they're kicking everyone's butt,
Right.
And so I'm looking for that tough match. Like, give me the one that's tough because I want to see the kid challenged, and I want to see how he reacts. Not even about whether he wins or lose. I'm not worried about that.
Yeah.
And then last thing is leg attacks. That's a red flag for me, man. I've seen some really great wrestlers where I'm like watching 3 or 4 films. I'm like, dude, you haven't hit a leg attack. Like how you like you went through 18 years of your life and you can't hit a leg attack, and then you're gonna come to college and we're gonna teach you one. It's pretty hard.
Yeah, that's not good.
Yeah.
that's
But guys
not
win.
good.
There's a lot of guys that win without leg attacks.
Yeah.
And MJ might have been one of them. You know what I mean? He might have been one of them. But he's put the work in to
one
improve,
kid.
So.
I can think of probably 4 off the top of my head that coming out of high school, it wasn't just that they scored defensively, they scored a bunch of different ways without grabbing the leg. And I can't tell you one of them panned out in college. Not one of them. You got to be able to go get a leg.
You think about it, you got 18 years to learn it, and you got 4 to 5 years with us.
Yeah.
We're gonna, when you get to college, that's the first thing we're gonna do. We're gonna say again, I told you, we need to go 2 leg attack. Okay, you got to have something to go get. But it's hard to break habits, and it's hard to learn something that you haven't done for your entire life. So those would be my things, I guess.
All right. I like that. All right. Let's do some quick questions here. Try your best not to think too much about these.
Okay.
Just fire off some answers. All right.
All right.
In your estimation, who is the best recruiter in college wrestling right now?
I don't know, man. One, I don't pay a lot of attention to that crap too much. I did have a good answer for you though. I think who the heck? I don't know. I mean, I want to say I think Ramos has done a pretty good job. I want to say, and again, you don't know who to give credit to because it's baloney, right? Like you see North Carolina, and I follow them because he's a buddy of mine, right? Like they picked up some pretty good guys for where they're at, but you don't know who's really doing what behind the scenes. I think Cornell has continued to do a really good job even after Cole left. I think that shows a lot. I think a lot of the staff that was at Oklahoma State obviously did a pretty good job. And that's not, I'm just again guessing. NC State,
were getting
NC
A1
State
recruits.
does awesome. Like they do a great job. Obviously
Pat is amazing.
I didn't answer very good
as a type. No, that's good. That's fine. All right, here we go. Best wrestling shoe of all time.
Best of all time, off the top of my head, Athletor.
Oh wow, I like that. Wow,
I'm an OG. I'm an old kid, man. Kendall Cross. I won a lot.
Yeah.
Like I did the first of most of my winning with them pearl colored things on my feet, man. So I got deep memories of me becoming very elite with those shoes on my feet. So
I think that came up. Joel and I had a little conference up in SLO with another person this past week, and I believe the Kendalls came up quite a bit. I actually have a pair of the white ones downstairs right now. They're not in great shape, if we're going to be honest. They're not in great shape. All right.
Funny
get
that you mentioned Cornell as doing a great job with their recruiting, because the other person who has the Kendall Cross is Mike Gray.
There you go.
Oh yeah, it's his choice.
Yeah. All right, next one. You only get 4, and they got to be American. Who is on your Mount Rushmore of wrestling?
Baumgartner, Smith, Burroughs, Man, you just got these young guys. It's so tough, but I'm going to project that Snyder will be there.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard not to say Snyder, right? Like, I mean, you know, nobody's giving him an Olympic gold medal this summer, but you know, Sadulayev being out, I know he lost to a kid from Belarus or Bahrain or whatever the heck it is now.
And he's just so young still, isn't he? Like, isn't he like 20?
Yes.
7?
He's not 30.
I mean,
he's
unless
not
he
30.
quits.
Right. I think he's like 28.
So unless he decides to quit, which I don't anticipate, he'll just got to keep on winning. You know?
And also, he has medaled every single year. He's medaled every year. That's wild to me. Because even JB had.
I know how hard that is.
Yeah, you do. Yeah, you do.
Yeah.
So like JB had a hiccup in 2016. You know, like it happens, right? But not to Snyder. It's wild to me that he's not on more people's lists because he's unreal. Okay, last one, and then we're gonna let you go back to your vacation. Thank you again for that, by the way. You got a magic wand. And you could change one thing about the sport of wrestling, what would it be?
I'm going to stir some crap up with this magic wand. All right. And this is about college wrestling. And I'm not adamant about this because I could be swayed. But I believe your answer to all your problems is to put the NCAA trophy in a dual championship and keep your individual tournament. Change nothing, right? But take the trophy away from that tournament. Everyone will still go watch. No one goes to see what team wins. Create a dual championship, but give the trophy, right? Because the problem is if you've got all these other things, but Iowa and Penn State, they got excuses and they don't want to show up, which is fine. But if you put the trophy there, they will come. Move the trophy, create a championship. Don't tell me how you can't do it. Tell me how we can do it. And
it's so easy. It's
sold
so
out
freaking easy.
Dual championship, and let's have a sold out individual championship.
You know, it's funny. We talk about this magic wand stuff a lot, right? Every week we talk about magic wand, and a lot of it has to do with like rule changes that are kind of hard to. They would grind a lot of people's gears, like moving, you know, because NCAA wrestling is kind of moving towards freestyle-ish, right? With the exception of a step out rule. The out of bounds is bigger than anything in freestyle, but that's hard, right? Because then you're taking away the sanctity of folk style wrestling. I think this adds to, and it's very freaking simple to do, man. Like I think that the process is in place, the know-how is obviously there. I think there's a majority of people that want to see this happen. Why is it not happening?
I don't know. I think move the trophy. Take it away. Take it away for 1 year. Guess what? It'll still be sold out. People don't go to see who wins. They go because it's amazing. You know, the first round, the second round, the blood round. You know what I mean? It's great. It's so good. Move the trophy. Let's create another one. Let's replicate what we've done. Right. And I don't care how we do it, whether we build it up over months. And there's a lot of reasons not to do it. Let's figure out the reason to do it. And those teams will show up because at the end of the day, individuals, the team members care about the individual championship. Coaches are judged by your team championship. And now it'll add a whole new dynamic. Talk about how you recruit, you know, like everything will change. Everything will change. So that's my opinion. I think it'd be fun too, you know. So
yeah, it would add to the sport. It would definitely add to the sport. There's no question about it. Awesome. Okay. Thank you very much for coming and taking some time. And are you going to see you in Fargo this next week or what?
I'll be in Fargo. Yep, I'll be up there.
All right. We'll catch up there. Thank you again, Coach. I'll talk to you soon.
All right. Sounds good. See ya.
Wait, don't go anywhere. Before you hit that next button, if you enjoyed listening to this episode, do us a huge favor. Click that subscribe button, and if you're so inclined, leave a review and share it.
What you want to know, man? Welcome to the show.